So how's the tour for the movie been?
It's been good. I'm it's 6 years of work, so it's exciting to be at a place where people are watching it. That's just that's why you do it.
Yeah.
So,
how's this one been compared to like The Greatest Showman?
It was really so different, and Showman was my first film. It was a studio film. It's a lot to navigate a film of that scale as your first studio film. I don't recommend it.
Are you handling this one better? Because you got a little bit more experience now?
Yeah, I think this is definitely lessons learned on Showman.
Yeah.
And whilst this was an independent film, which again came with a whole new learning curve, which as a filmmaker, I kind of wish that, I wish I could do a studio film knowing what I know now, and I wish that I could do an independent film knowing what I know now. I kind of feel like they were both sort of very big productions.
Right, yeah.
It was a big production to be doing as your first film, and it's a big production to be doing as an independent film. So just a lot of lessons, and a lot of the creative crew from Showman came across to Better Man with me, and so I think from that point of view, it was very satisfying because, even creatively, everyone who's creative does something and then goes, next time I'm going to get that right.
It's interesting you say that a lot of the crew from the first movie that came over to this one, visually I found it to be, very similar in a lot of ways, which is, great. But it's such a vastly different story, I guess talk to me a little bit about visually how you decided how you wanted to make the movie compared to the first one, to coming over to this, which is a more personal story.
So this was definitely, Rob's life growing up in Stoke-on-Trent, the nightclub scene, the sort of stadiums, it all sort of, to me, the language felt like it should be more gritty.
That's an interesting way to put something that has so many visual effects. You don't generally think of the word gritty.
That's right. And even the shooting style, that sort of handheld camera, is not something you usually do with a digital character. There's a reason. It makes it a lot more difficult.
Right.
But we were on vintage lenses, and we were flaring out the camera. There was colors blowing out. There was dry ice rolling over stages, and you're just like, my background's in visual effects and animation, so I was like, ooh, that's a hard shot. I don't know what they're tracking off. That's ridiculous. Credit to Weta, who, moved to Melbourne, Australia to set up a studio to do this film. And they're staying there, which is phenomenal for Australia to have Weta in Australia full time.
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of the collaboration with Weta and the lengths that they went to make this film something special. It became a real passion piece for the studio. But style-wise, I was looking at films like, The Wrestler, and being like, I love the grit of this.
Oh, yeah.
Darren Aronofsky's brilliant, and so I was like, or even Requiem for a Dreams, for a Dream, that were the sort of references that I was looking at for the grittiness, and it's the reason why at the end of, we shot digital, and we had a digital character, but the whole time we're trying to find this texture to it. Yeah. So we ended up printing it out to 35mm and then scanning that back in. So what you're watching is actually a 35mm print of the film, and we printed onto different stocks in different eras. So early on, it's a grainier stock. Then when it goes to the nightclubs, it's onto Kodak Ektachrome, which makes colors all kind of go a little jazzed. We really went through different stocks.
I see why it took 6 years.
Yeah, well.
It sounds incredibly complicated, but then again, I guess it should. Like you said, you're looking for a gritty quality and using a style that doesn't necessarily lend itself to that.
Yeah, and then films like All That Jazz, where you've got Fosse dancing with the camera, as no one is better at doing, and so it's that real. That sort of energy and that tempo and that pace, but it's all musical. It's all got a musicality to it, even when it's not a musical number. There's this sort of flow to it.
I feel like Robbie Williams' story is, more well known in the UK. Obviously, it's not really a story that most people know here in the States. I know me. I know I maybe knew like the barest bones of it.
Yeah, I mean, some people don't know him at all.
Right.
And that's, I kind of love that audience for this film, because they're meeting the film more like they met Showman, like it's an original musical.
Yeah.
They don't really know him. They don't really know his story. They don't even really know his music. So to me, I get to define those musical numbers for the first time with that audience. Whereas it's different with the rest of the world. You're dealing with people who already have their own association with those numbers. And so what you're trying to do is give a new context to a musical number they already know.
Did you see his story as one that needed to be told on the big screen, or that you wanted to tell on the big screen? Did you necessarily see it that way?
No. I didn't wake up and go, Robbie Williams is a story that needs to be told.
Right.
And a lot of other artists that I would choose before that.
Yeah.
No, it came out of, he helped me out on Showman in a kind of very critical moment where we were going to have to start again on all of the music and rewrite all of the music. And he did a personal video to Hugh Jackman that persuaded Hugh that this was the way to go. And so I am incredibly grateful to Rob. There would be no Greatest Showman if it wasn't for him helping me out. He was a big reference for Hugh during the making of the film, which is why, during the making of the film, but also in the lead up to the film. Hugh would reference his music, he would reference his swagger, his showmanship. And I get it, Rob is a great showman, and if you ever see him live, you're like, wow, he really does. He can hold an absolute stadium of people in the palm of his hand.
Yeah.
So he helped me out on Showman. I then got to know him personally. And as you do with people, you just talk. And he would tell me stories about his life. And the more we talked, the more I was not just captivated by the stories, but I was also really taken with the way in which he tells them. Because being a showman, he likes that raconteur thing of being able to tell a story.
Yeah.
And I started doing these recordings with him. In fact, he only liked telling me the story once. So if I remember there was a story he told me outside of the recording studio, and I said, can you tell that again when we're in the studio? And he goes, yeah, just make sure you bring someone who hasn't heard it. And I'm like, what? And he's like, just bring someone over who hasn't heard the story, so I've got, so I can get a real reaction.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay. So I had to bring someone over so that he had a fresh audience. And it always makes me laugh, because I'm just like, that's Rob to a T.
Yeah.
He wants your initial surprise, your initial laughter, and that's the initial, surprise of the story. So that's kind of what we did. We just did, in me hearing those stories and wanting to capture them, I knew that he had a recording studio at his house. So whenever I was in LA, I would just drop over to his place and we'd go downstairs and sit in his recording studio and just talk, like you and me are now, literally. And I, at that point, had no interest in making a film. It was just to capture the stories the way he tells them. And I thought that was it was such a unique thing, the way he tells stories, that I was like, these might just be for you to listen to in a nursing home one day, but while you still remember the details, you should get it down.
Get it down,
Because I have no idea how someone who's done that many drugs and that much alcohol still remembers anything, But it was amazing.
Who came up with, I'm sure you ask the question all the time, who came up with the chimpanzee idea?
I did, based on, I just wanted to lens it differently. I just wanted to come at it in a different way, for a number of reasons. I think that, Robbie's not visually iconic, Elvis with his quiff, Freddie Mercury with his mustache and his teeth, You know, Elton with his glasses and his hat. All of these people, you can basically pick them in silhouette. Robbie isn't visually iconic in the same way. So I didn't want to be constantly battling with, oh, that actor looks like Robbie in this moment. Oh no, he doesn't look like Robbie in that moment. Oh no, he does there. Oh, he doesn't really there. No, he doesn't there. That dialogue that goes on in your subconscious whenever you're watching a film about someone that you know visually, you have that unconscious conversation rattling around in the back of your head every time there's a new scene.
Right.
And I was just like, I don't want that to be part of the narrative. When and where the actor looked or didn't look like Robbie Williams.
Was he receptive to the idea?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's your job to make it their idea. So I said to Rob, I said, no, if you're an animal, how would you see yourself? And he said with this big grin, a lion. And I was like,
right, of course.
Of course, a lion's not going to work. So I said, really? And he sort of gave it a moment. He goes, nah, more a monkey. And then he said, a cheeky monkey. And I said, great. What do you think of this idea? And then I pitched him the idea. And to be fair, he was on board with it straight away. He literally just smiled and was like, that's great.
Yeah, it fits. I think it fits for a lot of the movie where it kind of seems like he's, you know, kind of acting like a trained dancing monkey for a lot of his career.
Yeah, and you know, I came upon the idea really by listening to those recordings, and he quite often would say, you know, I was off my head. They just dragged me up on stage to perform like a monkey, or he'd say I was just there being the performing monkey, and it's not just in the on-stage moments. It's to his mates, you know, who from Stoke-on-Trent, who are much tougher than he is, but he performs like he's one of them, you know. You know, and he had these beautiful stories, which unfortunately I couldn't fit in the film, but about, you know, the things he did to sort of make himself appear tougher to his mates. And, you know, so it's always a performance, you know, and I think that's true of everyone. Like, we all wear different masks at different times, depending on who we're around.
Of course.
You know?
I think the thing that shines through for me, I think you get past the monkey thing after a certain point. You know, you almost kind of forget about it.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that comes through after that is how honest he is about himself. I think that's the main thing that I took away from it. Because like I said, I had very little knowledge of him. But the thing I think that hooked me into the movie was that he was just, unlike a lot of biopics where they kind of round off the edges, he's super honest and raw about everything.
Yeah, and it's a credit to Rob because, you know, I don't know another star on the planet who would let us portray them in a way that, you know, there's certain scenes where he just comes off really badly, you know, not likable, you know, being obnoxious, whatever it is, you just go, but in doing that, and I always think this is true, like if you can take someone to those low points, then you feel the high points so much more. Yeah. And I think there's a real issue with a lot of musical biopics that they won't be honest about those low points.
Right.
You know, because the artist is dead and the estate wants to protect the legacy or whatever the reasons are. You know, you read scripts for musical biopics, and then you see what they end up doing, and you're like, well, that got watered down.
Of course. Yeah, we all know them when we see them. This time of year is full of them.
So you kind of go, it's refreshing that you have an artist who go to say, I just want warts and all, you know? Yeah. And they were my struggles, and those struggles were real. And it is a miracle that he made it out the other side of those struggles. You know, the battles he had with mental health issues, you know, that's crippling, and there are many artists who don't make it through that, you know. So it's you know, it's a credit to him that he let us do that. He didn't make any changes to the script when he read it. And I was like, I'm not really sure you're going to understand when this is up on a big screen.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's one thing looking at text on a page, But it's another thing seeing it projected big.
I mean, that was supposed to like its own unique challenge, telling somebody else's story with the person kind of right there.
Sitting next to you.
Right.
That was a screening. The first time we watched it, I was just like this.
Yeah.
Like, even things that I'm like uncomfortable watching, I'm like, oh.
So credit to him. I mean, the first time he watched it, he was kind of shell shocked. He was just like, oh, that's a lot to unpack.
Before we wrap up here, what do you hope that people take away from Better Man when they go to see it?
It's interesting. I used to like have these things that I'd hoped people would take away from Showman, and then what they took away was so much more than what I envisaged. It really made me understand that people relate to a film and to its characters in different ways, and it's why people. It is the power of cinema. It's how you see yourself. Do you see yourself in the struggle with his father? Do you see yourself in the struggle with his nan? His relationship with Nicole. Like, there's so many very personal stories that I think are deeply relatable. And I think that how people connect with it starts becoming a kind of personal thing, it's entertaining, and yes, it's an emotional roller coaster, and yes, it should take you to those highs and lows that film does when it's at its best, But but there's no sort of one takeaway. When we were presenting this film to distributors really early on, one of the distributors called me the day after, and he said, I haven't spoken to my dad for 7 years, and I did today because I saw your film yesterday.
Wow.
And he said, I've been waiting this whole time for my dad to change, and I realized he's never changing.
Yeah.
And I just have to accept him. And it's about acceptance. It's not about forgiveness. It's about acceptance. And I thought that's incredible. Like, for someone to not connect with their dad, and he could have gone a lifetime. His dad could have died before he ever reconnected.
Yeah.
With him. And I think again that to me is a really touching takeaway, that someone watched that film and then felt the need to go, I've got to stop waiting for someone to change. He's clearly not going to. What people take away, I think, is a many varied thing. But the thing that I enjoy most when I talk to people after they've seen it is their desire to see it again. And I think that as a filmmaker is the best compliment you can pay. I remember walking out of Whiplash, walking straight up to the ticket booth at the ArcLight when it was in Hollywood, and literally saying, I'll have 2 tickets to whatever the next session is.
Yeah. And
I called a friend and was like, you gotta get down here by 2:30 because we're seeing this film.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that is like, that's the holy grail, right?
It's funny because you may have 2 movies that do that for people, because I know, like, my girlfriend has seen The Greatest Showman like 1,000 times, and so you might have another movie like that with Better Man. So thanks for checking out the show. If you like what we're laying down, please subscribe to our channel and click the bell to receive notifications for all of our latest stuff.